Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Father Talks. I am your host, Mike D. I am here today with Miss Bev Mitelman. Bev, she works with people, and I'm going to turn it over to you because I want to make sure that I explain this right. I have been rehearsing it, but you know what? I think you're better suited for it.
I'm so happy to be here, Michael. Thank you for inviting me onto your platform.
Thank
So
you.
I am a relationship and certified attachment trauma practitioner. So what that means is I work with men and women and couples and families to help them understand where their attachment issues may lie. And I'm
Okay.
sure your audience have heard about attachment styles. People are talking about attachment styles more and more these days. So that's at the core of what it is that I work with people in terms of those that have issues around an insecure attachment style, meaning they have some challenges when they form emotional bonds with other people.
Okay. Well, in this day and age, like I was telling you before we got on, that for me, I really am specializing in trying to get men to talk more.
Mm.
And there's never any outlets. We don't know what our issues are in some relationships or just, let's say, just in life in general. So there's some sort of, attachment issue that I see. And even for myself, I find that guys who have had, um, we'll say, issues with, their parents, they don't have close relationships with their parents. So I think it makes it hard for men to build close relationships with their significant other, because especially when it comes to that mother role, we we don't when they don't have good bonds with them, it's harder to make an attachment with somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love what you're doing, creating this platform where you're encouraging men to speak a little more. I think it's very important. Like I said, I work a lot with men, and I work, of course, with women and couples. And attachment styles is absolutely one of the things that we see that is preventing some men, from communicating in the way they want to. There's also socialization. Right? So, I think you and I both know that girls and boys at a young age in our environment, we'll talk about in North America, are socialized very differently, right?
Yes.
And so I don't wanna say that it's just attachment styles is sort of at the root of all of this. Socialization plays a big difference in gender communications.
Right.
Right? So little girls are given a lot of grace to experience all sorts of emotions, right? Happiness, sadness. They're not given a lot of grace to experience anger, but boys are. So boys are given latitude to experience anger, sadness, happiness, and that's sort of the breadth. It sort of
Right.
stops
Right.
there, right? Whereas girls, if a girl is crying, we would consider that to be societally normal or acceptable, right? We
Right.
don't give that same latitude to boys, which I personally think is very, very damaging.
Yes. I will tell you that, and I had another guest on, and we were talking about this similar thing, that as an adult man, it has made life extremely difficult for me, growing up, because I've had such a difficult time expressing myself to people I care about. And when it comes to things like crying, like, I do not cry. Okay. I am 52 years old and I have not cried in almost 20 years. And
Really?
yes. And even like when my father-in-law passed away, when my mother-in-law passed away, didn't shed a tear. As much as it hurt, did not shed a tear, because I felt that this was something, because I'm a fixer, you know,
Uh-huh.
so I'm busy worried about fixing everybody else
Huh?
and not taking any time or space for my own personal emotion.
Uh, can I ask you a personal question?
Sure, sure.
Do you have any memory or recollection of when you were younger and you did cry and what happened when you did?
I grew up in an environment, so my mom worked a lot, so growing up with my uncles and cousins and that, we were if you fall down, a piece of your leg meat could be hanging out. Don't cry. Men don't cry. Stop that
Why?
damn crying.
What would
Yeah.
happen if you did?
It was like a cousin of mine, it was like, I, take kid like, he pop me in the head or something, like, "Hey, knock that shit off. Men don't cry." you know,
So there
you
was
know.
fear associated with it. I'm trying to
Yes, yeah.
understand, is it because you would be criticized, made fun of, you would be punished? Like,
It
what
was
would
more
happen if little
it was
Michael
more
cried?
it was more criticizing, and that, "Hey, boy knock that mess off," you know? So and it we never got, like, belittled or anything. It was just more, "Hey, boys don't cry.
Boys
Boys
don't
do,
cry. You got the message that
boys are tough, we don't cry, we do this, we do that, but boys don't cry."
yeah,
Plain and simple. So,
yeah.
I grew up to be a man who didn't cry, but, through I did parenting classes and, have taken some steps to try to learn more about my own issues, did some counseling and that, and with my own sons, I never put that same burden on them, like, because I don't cry doesn't mean you don't have to, and this is, like, if that I don't think less of you guys if you cry. If that is how you need to let it out. And this was something that was important to me about breaking the cycle because I did not want another person in his family who could not express themselves the same way with like every when it comes to being emotional, that type of stuff sometimes turns into anger because I don't want to feel that way. And this is my entire point of this conversation and doing what I'm doing, is to try to get more guys to be okay with expressing themselves.
Mhm.
And I get it. We don't want to be people who, every time they see something sad, they're just bawling. I get that. No man wants to be that way. Okay. Lifetime movies, you're crying more than your significant other. No, we don't want to be that way. But we do want to have a safe space to know that if I'm having a moment, you're my person and I can express that to you and you won't feel any less about me for it.
Right. Or you won't criticize me the way I was criticized when I was younger.
Yes. Yes.
So that's the fear. That's the fear is what's driving the behavior here. And I'll ask a very interesting question. When you get angry, or when little Michael, young Michael got angry, how was that responded to? Were you told, "Boy, we
That
don't
was
get angry"?
no,
Mm,
no. So I was never, so I grew up in Jersey. So coming up, like I learned at an early age, hey, protect yourself, protect your brother, protect your family. So when little Michael would get angry, that would be a fight of some sort.
mhm,
If you did something, even when we moved away from Jersey, you know, uh, my dad was in the military, you know, I was not the person to let things go. So if you did something to my brother, I was going to eventually catch you, you know, and so as an adult man, you know, I recognize those things and I need, I'm still growing. So I need those things to be different. I want at some point in my life, I want to feel comfortable, you know, expressing myself in a way where I'm not going to feel like people are going to judge me for it.
mhm.
So
Yeah. You're a cycle breaker, Michael. You should be very proud of
trying to
yourself.
be, I'm trying
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah, but you know what? You should be very proud of yourself. I think this entire conversation is just illustrating the point that what you learned in childhood in terms of what is acceptable behavior and what is not acceptable behavior shaped your lens, your mindset for how you were going to behave long after you left your childhood years.
Right.
So there is a reason today why it feels unsafe for you to cry, but you have no problems, displaying anger because anger was
Zero.
acceptable.
Right. I have 0 problems with anger, and I have 0 problems, though, being emotional with my kids. So, like, my kids can come up to me, hug me all day, I tell them I love them nonstop, you know? It is just the emotion that, like, if they come to me and they're upset about something, I'm never gonna be the person that's gonna cry with them. I'm always gonna be the person that's gonna try to fix whatever's going on.
Yes, I
So,
understand. But you're not going to criticize them for crying, right?
no,
You'll give them
no,
a
no, I
hug
never.
and give them
Yeah,
space for their emotions.
yeah, and that I think that with my girls, it's always been a natural thing, they cry freely. With the boys, because I didn't, they questioned whether or not they could, and we recognized that early on
Yeah,
and made sure that it was something that we fixed.
that's so wonderful. I
Yeah,
applaud you.
thank you.
Many people don't come to these realizations.
Right. Well, but that's the thing is that this conversation is so important because more people need to see that, having these conversations and men need to be okay with, hey, I'm not okay and I need to break this cycle for my kids. Or, what, hey, I've got young kids and I need to break this cycle of, whatever it is. It's a cycle that we need to break.
Yes.
So I leave a better path for my kids than what was laid out for me.
I love that. And so, emotions, all of us, men and women, have the same, aptitude for the range of emotions. It's not that women are more emotional or men are less emotional. As humans, we all have the same aptitude for emotions. Society dictates this is acceptable, this isn't acceptable. And of course, that changes in where you grew up in the world and your family dynamics.
Right.
So, once you realize that, it's very freeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have recently more so, like I have kind of cut ties with anything that interferes with my peace of mind,
Mhm.
I have to put to the back of the bus because these things are preventing from me from being the best version of me,
Mhm.
or I'm just constantly miserable dealing with things that just keep me unhappy.
Yeah, and you might have at some point felt obliged or burdened to hold on to that responsibility, and
Yes.
you and I are the same age. You mentioned your
Yeah.
age before we started
Yeah.
filming. We're the same age, and I got to a place around the same time where I was like, "You know what? I am holding on to my peace." So if I have another 30, 40, 50, maybe years to live, my peace is the most important thing to me. And so my partner laughs
Yes.
at me because when I'm very strict with what I allow into my inner sphere, and so if someone comes at me and, they're being disrespectful or they're causing drama or something that I don't wanna deal with, I always say, "Access denied."
Yes.
And I just don't let it in.
Right, but it's not a bad thing.
No,
It's not a
it's not.
bad thing setting limits, and it has taken me a very long time to learn to set limits, you know, on what I allow people in my life to do, what I allow people in my life to say, because it's always been about, what, hey, I've dealt with enough drama. I want to keep the peace, but I'm not really keeping the peace I'm keeping the peace for people to come around and talk and yada yada yada, but I am unhappy because I'm allowing
Yes.
certain things.
Right,
So,
and so you're keeping everyone else's peace at your own
yes,
expense.
yes.
Which, by the way, is very, very symptomatic of a particular attachment style. I don't know if you
Well,
wanna
that was
jump into
yes,
attachments.
actually, I was getting ready to ask you to explain to us what are attachment styles and
Okay.
how they, impact our relationships, romantic or otherwise.
Yeah, so attachment styles is really the way in which we form an emotional bond with someone else, right? So, what's fascinating is that everyone has an attachment style. We all have one way in which we do it, and it's learned behavior. Right?
Okay,
So, just like you and I, we were talking about how we learned that some emotions were acceptable and some weren't. Our attachment styles are learned behavior that we learned generally from our home of origin as well, like our parents. We are most suggestible in those early years, 0 to 5. So that's when we kind of learn the most in terms of how we are expected to connect with someone else. So in a utopian world, everyone would grow up in a home whereby their parents would be emotionally attuned to the child. So, a lot of what you're describing in terms of your children have an emotion, you meet them where they're at, even if you're not crying yourself, you're still giving them room, right? You're validating, you're not criticizing, you're giving them space. All of that is what we call presence, emotional attunement, and it means everything to a child. Everything. So in a perfect world, all children grow up with that type of predictable and safe home environment. But and what happens is that that child then grows into an adult and we say they have a secure attachment. They believe that attaching to other people, forming emotional bonds is all about connection. So they develop a really strong sense of self. So they're good. being independent, and they're also really good in coupleship, right? Because they understand basic things like how to communicate, how to have boundaries. What are my needs? What are your needs, right?
Right.
What are some of my coping mechanisms if I'm feeling frustrated? And most importantly, generally, people who grew up in that home where there was emotional attunement is that they're emotionally regulated
Okay.
for the
So,
most
okay.
part.
Yeah, okay. So what do you mean by emotionally regulated?
So someone who's emotionally regulated, it's the opposite of being volatile. So it's almost
Okay.
easier to pick out someone who's volatile. So someone who is, you know, cries, let's say a lot, goes from being calm to being hysterical. Someone who is
Gotcha.
constantly upset. Someone who looks at the world, there's always an issue. I'm sure you've had friends like this where there's always something going on. There's always a problem, and so people from an emotional standpoint, some people are steady, like a stream, you know these people, right? How you doing
I
today,
know a
Bob?
few of them.
Good,
I know a
always
few.
good. Yeah. And you know other people who are just up and down, up and down, up and down. And so it's that volatility. They never learned how to actually control. First of all, understand their emotions, how to communicate their emotions, how to control their emotions and their nervous system
Okay.
because of the type of household that they came from.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we're
Now,
gonna dive
that
into
makes
this
that
one
makes
more.
that makes that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that
So have you met people before, Michael, for example, who just no matter what's going on in their life, like they could be, for example, married to a wonderful partner, just won the lotto, they have three healthy kids, and like they've won at life, and yet there's always something wrong.
yes. Actually, I know more than one of them, in fact, but we won't
Right.
say any names.
And and that's, these people unfortunately are always looking at life like something's coming at me, right? There's always something wrong. And so they don't have that capacity to regulate their emotions.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I was thinking about this when I was putting together the show today. So children, okay. How do our children play a role in developing attachment style?
How do
Okay.
our children play a role? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm definitely Ooh, I'm gonna tackle that. If it's okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back and kinda just finish off a little bit of what I was saying before,
Absolutely.
and then
Absolutely.
okay, but hang on to that question, okay?
Okay.
What I've painted so far is sort of the utopian, the perfect scenario, someone who has
Okay.
a secure attachment, right? Oh, at least half of our population in North America, probably closer to 60%, doesn't have a secure attachment. They have what's called an insecure attachment style. And on the insecure attachment style, we have like a continuum, a spectrum. We have those that are anxious, preoccupied, or anxious attachers. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have the dismissive avoidance or the avoidant attachers. And somewhere in the middle, we have the fearful avoidant, also known as the disorganized attacher.
Okay.
So when you look online, you'll see there's 4 styles. That's what they're talking about. Someone who's secure, someone who's dismissive avoidant, someone who's anxious preoccupied, and someone who is fearful avoidant. And everyone in the world falls into one of these boxes, not always so cleanly. Often they
Okay.
fall a little bit here and a little bit there, but generally that's what we're looking at.
Okay.
Okay. I think
So
you're gonna find this super interesting, this stuff.
yeah, listen, I'm hooked right now. So
Okay.
I'm learning a bunch of stuff that I did not know before. I've heard of some of this stuff, but I didn't, I don't know the depth behind it.
Well, what's so interesting is that it impacts us so largely in terms of our emotions, our thought processes, our coping mechanisms,
Right.
mostly inside of our romantic relationships, but absolutely in our other relationships with friends, with colleagues, with family members, with neighbors. And also our relationship to ourselves. So everything that we learned in those earliest years form almost like a lens by which you then see the world. And so people who grew up with they didn't get that consistent emotional attunement, they look at the world as something that they need to survive. They don't feel safe in the world. Whereas the person with, that secure attachment, they feel that, the world is just a beautiful possibilities of connections. Right? Really different. Really different. So
I know that one. I know
someone,
that person.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think as we go through these styles, you're gonna go, "Oh, okay, I know." You're going.
yeah,
It's gonna be obvious, and I think also what most people end up doing is they end up seeing a lot of their own traits in the styles as well. And so I want to reiterate for you and your audience that this is learned behavior. This is not a personality disorder. This is not a mental illness. This is how you learn to survive in the world. Right? So if we start on one side of the continuum, the anxious preoccupied, this is an individual who came out of a home where they didn't experience consistent love. They had it was unpredictable. They had some love and sometimes they didn't. And so this could be a whole host of different scenarios. Let's say, for example, a mother was an alcoholic and one day she was very loving, and the next day she was really mean. Or one day she was very productive, and the next day she was passed out for half the day, right? That
right.
unpredictability, right? We see lots of scenarios whereby there's a father who is sometimes a part of the child's life and sometimes not. Maybe the father has many kids that he's trying to raise. Maybe the father's away for work. Maybe the father is emotionally absent.
Right. Okay.
What that creates in the child is they get a taste of love and they know it feels good, but it's never predictable and consistent. And so the child learns very early on to start chasing after that comfort and love from the people that mean the most to them, which is always the parent.
The parents.
Right. So they become parent pleasers. They try, and there's lots of different things that they can do. Sometimes they become perfectionists. Sometimes they become overly congenial. Sometimes, they become like mother's little helper. Um, Sometimes they will try to command attention in different ways. They'll have tantrums. So whatever it is, that child is desperately throwing out a bid for connection with the parents,
Okay.
and they're trying to connect, and the parent is either connecting with them or not. But the child learns that in this case, I cannot count on love and comfort to be predictable. I know. So let's extrapolate this, right? That's this little child. Let's say it's a little 4-year-old girl, Sally, right? And her father is sometimes there, sometimes not. Sometimes the father is kind, sometimes they're not. How do we think, knowing what we know about human behavior, how do we think Sally is going to operate in the world when she grows up into young adulthood and she starts dating? Let's say Sally's interested in dating men. How do you think she's going to operate?
She's always gonna be I'm thinking that she's always gonna be looking for the regular, like, input from that person, but never prepared for when she gets it. Like, she won't know how to act. "Okay, I'm getting it now, but is that gonna happen again tomorrow or later on?"
Right. Yes. Yes. You're right. You're right on the money. So she's going to likely chase, and not just Sally, we all do this as humans. We recreate dynamics that we know to be familiar. Our subconscious mind does this. So even if Sally knows that she really should date a man who's stable and this and has these traits, she's still going to be physically attracted to a man who represents the dynamics she once had with her father.
Okay.
Which in this case, Sally will likely end up chasing after an emotionally unavailable man. and she'll accept breadcrumbs from him because that's what she got in her childhood. She got breadcrumbs from daddy. That's what she knows to be normal. She'll embrace those moments of love, and the moments where she feels that he's pulling away, she will run after him. She will chase, right? Because that's what she did her entire life.
That
So
is nuts.
nuts, right? So parents, I know, parent pleasers become people pleasers older in life. They're the ones, and you probably have friends like this too, who will bend themselves into a pretzel to be so congenial because for them, their core wound that they walk around with is abandonment. They felt abandoned by their parents. So their biggest threat is you will leave me. So I am going to be the best friend you've ever had. So you're not going to leave me because I'm just too good of a friend.
Right. That's that is crazy because having this broken down, like, I'm starting to see this stuff pop up in so many people I know in different types of relationships. So listening to it, I'm like, that is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs right now.
Yeah. And, listen, I found this work years ago, but when I first read it,
Right.
I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I mean, so okay, so let's say so for men who are not emotionally attached to we'll say either one of their parents, you know. So you don't have a close relationship with your father, you're missing an emotional attachment to your mom. Now you're an adult man in a relationship. What happens then? Because are you ever can you ever be satisfied with the person that you're with if you're always well, one, you're always searching for love, that female attention. Can you be satisfied with one person? Well, with the person you're with, rather. And as far as returning affection as a man, do you know how to do that?
Mm, that's an easier question to answer. So, first of all, can you be satisfied with one person? It depends on if they're meeting the need that's important to you. And that need is different for each person,
Right.
right?
Okay. Okay.
So, and can they change? Yes, if they want to,
Right.
right? So I always say that changing your attachment style is akin to, for example, I want to put on, let's say, 4 or 5 pounds of muscle in the gym,
Yeah.
right? That's my goal, let's say, for 2026. Well, I'm going to have to create a plan. I'm going to have to stick to it. I'm going to have to do it regularly. It's not something I'm going to go to the gym once in February and it's going to happen, right? It's like like
We'd all
any
be doing it then.
right. I mean, if anyone, if it was that easy, but changing your attachment style absolutely can be done if you have a commitment. Like anything else in the body, you can rewire your brain.
Right.
You can absolutely change these things. But I'm gonna step back because you have so many good questions. I want to give the full picture.
Listen, I am loving this. Listen, just breaking this down right now, just there are so many things like even people that I deal with on a regular basis that, I talk to, friends and that, you know, I know some of their personal life, some things in their personal life and whatnot. And hearing, having this conversation, you know, like, okay, for instance, so what would you say to the woman who cannot she cannot find a healthy relationship
Hmm.
because she says she wants a good man,
Yeah.
but gets into a relationship with a good man and ends up breaking up with him because he's boring.
He's boring. Yeah. So this is something we see very, very often. So when someone grows up in a home where they don't have that consistent emotional attunement and they develop an insecure attachment style, they will, until they change the pattern, continue to chase chaos.
Right.
Chaos, right? In this case, we were talking about the little girl, Sally, that grew up and had an emotionally unavailable father.
Well,
She then
right.
grows up into a grown woman and she's going to naturally be attracted to emotionally unavailable men who are going to give her slivers of attention and who are not really going to give her what she actually needs for a few reasons. One, Sally wouldn't have as an anxious preoccupied, she would have a very poor idea of what she actually needs because her entire childhood was spent actually focusing outwards. How do I please everyone else around me so they'll like me and they won't leave me? So she's got a very, at this point, weak sense of self, weak sense of boundaries. So she's really ripe for someone to come around, a narcissist, for example, to come around and take advantage of her. She's very ripe for things like addictions because she's likely to feel her emotions in a very big way. She's likely to be emotionally dysregulated, volatile, and most importantly, she has, as an anxious preoccupied, not developed the skill to self soothe. So when she's upset, she doesn't know how to calm herself. She is absolutely reliant, codependent at times on external sources. She's the person that has tons of friends,
Right.
always has to have people around her, cannot be alone, right? She's the person that if something happens, she'll make 20 phone calls and tell the story 20 different times because she doesn't know how to just sit with her emotions and let it pass. No one ever
Right.
modeled this for Sally. She has no idea how to do it, right? So that's and so what we see, this type of person in a romantic relationship with their partner, they need a lot of validation, a lot of reassurance, a lot of like a lot of attention. They're the ones who will text like 20, 30 times. Are we okay? You didn't say good morning at breakfast today. Last night you seemed a little bit off. Okay, but you said I would see you at 8 and I'm only seeing you at 8:15. You're mad at me, right? You must be mad at me. What's wrong? That's the person. Yeah. So they're so focused on their partner and they're so afraid that their partner will leave them because of that core wound of I will be abandoned. They also carry around core wounds of things like I am unlikable, I am unlovable, I am unworthy, I will be excluded. It's a heavy burden,
Right.
right?
So oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, that's okay. So
No.
that gives you like a picture of Sally. Now we're going to talk about the other type of individual that also didn't get emotional attunement, but developed a completely different set of strategies, maladaptations for how to deal with that.
Okay.
Okay. The dismissive avoidant. So it's like a continuum. Over here we have the anxious, preoccupied Sally, and over here we have uh, someone who's dismissive avoidant. Someone who's dismissive avoidant generally would have experienced emotional neglect in their childhood. So the parents were there. They got 3 meals a day. They got clothing and food and whatnot, but there was no love. So it could have been a very stoic home. Emotions weren't tolerated. Emotions were criticized, judged. It could have been a child that grew up in a high demand religion. There's lots of scenarios there whereby children do not feel like they are emotionally connected to their parents. They spend an enormous amount of time alone and they learn that they cannot rely on anyone else other than themselves.
Right.
So this is the baby who cries and cries and no one comes to save them.
Yeah. So, what does that adult look like?
Yes, excellent question. So that child learns that the only one they can trust is themselves. They do not have trust in other people. They are highly independent. They absolutely value their freedom. They are, for the most part, disconnected from their emotions because they were never given a template or a model for how to, in a healthy way, pass through their emotions. So when emotion comes up, they push it down. And what they generally do is they generally have a whole suite of like comfort things that they do in order to try to regulate their nervous system. Their nervous system is also dysregulated, not in the same way, not in a volatile way as the anxious preoccupied, but they much prefer to be alone. These are the types of people that are very, very slow to warm up to any type of relationship because for them, they fear that they're going to have to give up their freedom. They're they're very fearful of vulnerability because it never felt safe. right? They see vulnerability as being weak. And so this type of individual is the type of person that will, for example, spend the whole weekend, binging some sort of Netflix show completely alone. They can get into relationships, but oftentimes they are disconnected emotionally from their partner.
Okay.
Um, they have a very hard time with conflict. They have a very hard time with criticism. Their core wound is, and this is going to surprise you, the core wound that they walk around with is, I am defective. There is something wrong with me. And that goes back to, I know that, and when I say core wounds, people are unaware of this because it sits in our subconscious mind, right?
Right.
So it's not in our conscious awareness, but in our subconscious mind, that child learns at a very young age that if there has to be something wrong with me, that my parent doesn't want to spend any time with me, that I cry and cry and cry and nobody comes to my rescue.
Right. So crazy to me because again, all of these all of these styles literally see in people that I deal with and have friends that people I've known 20 years.
Yeah.
And so some of them I know yeah, I've known from an early age. So I know what their home life is like, growing up and hearing some of this stuff, I see the behaviors, connected. Like that is just it is crazy town frolic.
Yeah, it
And
really is. Let me tell you a little more about the behaviors of
yeah,
the dismissive avoidance. It's called the avoidant for a reason, right? So they avoid their own feelings and they absolutely will avoid the feelings of their romantic partner, for example.
okay,
Conflict feels very, very scary for them. So they are the type of person that if you come to them and you say, listen, something on my mind, I want to talk. If they fear that that is an unsafe environment, they will leave the room. They'll go,
yeah,
I'm not dealing with this," and they'll walk out. So, dismissive avoidants actually communicate far more with body language than they do
okay.
with their words, because they were never taught how to use their
I
words.
am gonna be looking for this stuff every time I talk to somebody, just like people that I deal with now, all of this stuff, I'm just gonna be like, "Oh my god, I wonder if this is this, if that's that, if
Yeah.
this is connected to s."
So it's like a superpower because once you see these patterns, all of human
Yeah,
behavior is patterns. Once you see
right,
these patterns, you can't unsee them. So to tell you another interesting thing, when we talk about coping mechanisms, when we talk about the person who's anxiously attached, when
okay,
they are feeling threatened, so imagine that the object of their desire, their romantic partner is pulling away and they feel threatened, "You're gonna abandon me," right? They always come closer. They use activation strategies. So they will do a whole host of things to get your attention, your validation, to, make you pay attention to them.
right.
Anything from crying to they might threaten you, they might try to make you jealous, they might do anything and everything to get your attention because it feels so threatening to them that you're pulling away.
God,
Now this
I've
person
dated this person, it's like
Yes, I'm sure you have. Yeah, I'm sure you have, and they're the type of person that's like, "We need to talk about it now. I can't go
yeah,
to sleep until we talk about it." And most people are like, "Why don't we sleep on it for a day and just, let it simmer so that we don't say things that we don't mean to say?" And this person's like, "No, I can't think about anything else. My
right.
emotions are completely fixed on the fact that you're angry with me. Nothing else matters in this world, so it must be addressed now."
Yeah, see, and I'm a person who cannot once I've gotten angry, I need time to decompress because one thing I've learned that the things you say to a person can be far more damaging than anything you physically do to another person.
Yes.
And I've learned very early on, it is better for me to shut my mouth if I'm upset. Yet if I'm being very emotional, it is very important for me to be quiet, decompress, and figure out, hey, how can we have this conversation without it going off the rails?
Yes.
And until I do, I cannot have a conversation because I know something will come out that I don't mean.
Yes. And that is a very healthy way to handle this, right? You know where your limitations are. You can
Yeah.
identify in yourself when your nervous system is triggered. By the
Yes.
way, the first symptom, you know, your nervous system has two modes, right? Where you're in like rest and digest or you're in fight and flight.
Okay.
There's two, and it oscillates between the two depending on what's in front of you. But the first signal that you're moving from rest and digest, like you and I are both in a calm state now, we're having a
Right.
rational conversation. The first signal that you're moving to that other mode, fight or flight, is irritability. So you start going, oh, that's grating on me a little bit. I don't like what they just said. You're switching into fight or flight mode. So if you can recognize at that point this is triggering me, you can absolutely say to your partner, I'm going to take a little space.
Right.
Let's pick this back up after dinner.
Yeah. So how do you deal with the person who feels like they have to talk about it now because they're so emotionally volatile that
Yeah.
they feel like, because you're like as you said, they think that you're pulling away when you in fact just need a minute to decompress so you can have an adult conversation.
Yeah. So like the answer was in your question because I think you really do get it. If you understand that they're coming at you because they feel so threatened that you're going to leave, you can address that, right? You can
Right.
say, I know this feels really, really important to you. I need time to just relax. I'm not leaving you. I'm not, this is not the end of the world for us. But there are some things I want to say when I'm calm. Give me 2, 3, 4 hours. I promise you tonight at 8 o'clock after dinner, we'll talk about it.
We'll have this conversation.
Yeah.
'Cause
The worst thing to do is to walk out of the room and disappear for 2 days.
yeah. Yeah,
Right.
that
Or, don't respond to someone's text, like leave them on red.
yes.
That will make someone who's anxious spiral.
I mean, that makes sense. So, and I mean, a lot of times we do it because people do it purposely because they're mad about whatever, and we ignore the text messages and things that are coming through. But I understand where you're coming from, that it'll make their situation 10 times worse to, you know, be ignored.
Yeah, and that's malevolent, right? Because you see, it's that level of vulnerability. When we get close to people, we also let them in on how to hurt us.
Yes.
So if you and I are dating and you know that I need a quicker response and you're going to take 2 days because you know it's going to drive me
Yeah,
nuts,
get up under your
that's
skin, right.
malevolent, right? That's
Right.
like, why would you do that? It's the same amount of effort for you to turn around and say, Bev, give me a couple of hours. I promise we'll talk tonight.
Right.
Right?
And I can this is again, especially for guys, I know that we get we get so wound up that our significant other will be texting us and we'll just ignore that shit. Why? Because because if I respond once, then there's gonna be more messages. But we get more we need to learn how to deal with these situations in the moment, you know?
Yeah, so I this is when I work with couples, we talk when things are calm, right? So the worst
Okay,
time to address this is when you're in fight or flight, right? Because that's
okay,
when you're like your emotions are heightened, right? The best way to do this is when you're actually calm. And I've had plenty of conversations with couples where we go, we're going to put together a strategy for how we're going to text each other. So women tend to have this we tend to send narratives, long text messages explaining everything and anything. And I've had plenty of men say they look at their phone and it just overwhelms them. They turn the phone off.
yeah,
And then a woman feels ignored, right? So, the first thing you could say is, listen, I don't like these messages. The man can say to the woman, I don't like getting these messages. 5 lines max,
yeah,
not going to argue over text. You can text me to say, hey, can we meet up after dinner to talk? Yes or no, but never have arguments over text. Stop with the long paragraphs and stop with the ignoring because
right,
That's really that avoidant behavior really triggers the anxious person. So the anxious person can stop doing things to aggravate the avoidant person, and the avoidant person can stop doing things to heighten the response from that person. And generally people know where each other's triggers are.
Right. So for us men, what would be your first recommendation? Okay, I realize that I'm this person who I need certain things, but I don't know how to express those. How do I what are my first steps? What's your recommendation for first steps for, hey, I want this relationship to work, but I know I have these underlying issues.
Yeah, so are you saying that you have underlying issues or you have underlying needs? Because
Underlying needs. So
okay,
my attachment issues, hey, I don't feel like I'm getting enough attention. We'll say that. Okay.
okay.
So as a
So
man, without seeming needy, because guys who say they need more attention are usually labeled as being needy.
it's a terrible label.
Right.
All of it, it's a terrible label. I usually see it being used to label women more
Okay.
often. But listen, as humans, we all have needs. Like that is
Right.
just we just
Right.
do. Um, the interesting thing is that we're not all aware of our needs, particularly if you grew up in a home where you didn't learn emotional attunement, you didn't learn nervous system regulation, uh,
Right.
or all of this healthy stuff. So the first thing I usually do is I work with men to help them identify what are your needs. So tell me, you have a need for peace? Okay, great. You have a need for physical affection? Okay, great. What does that look like? Tell me, how often? Is it holding hands or is it something else you're talking about, right? What do you actually need? And we actually put words to things, because the minute you put words to things, then all of a sudden the entire world of how you communicate this to your partner opens up,
Okay.
right? Because if you can say, listen, what I do need is I need some physical affection. I want to hold your hand, and once a week I want this. And what all of a sudden it becomes so much clearer. And I understand, okay, this is what makes Michael feel good. Most partners want to make their partner feel good, but we tend to ask our partners to read our minds, right? And men and women are very, very different with what they need, right? So I could, for example, if you and I were dating again, I could see that you're angry and frustrated and this, that, but I have no idea why. And to you, it might be so absolutely obvious that
Right.
last Tuesday when we were in a group, I disrespected you in front of people. And to you, that would be, well, how can you not know it? It was so obvious. And to me, I have no idea. So unless you actually tell me, look, respect, that's really important to me. These are the words that we look to give people the language so that they
Right.
can tell their partners, this is what I need.
So essentially, we've got to do a better job. I'm a work in progress. Even you know, at my age, I'm still a work in progress because I understand that, like you said, we expect people to read our minds. I'm definitely guilty of that, a few times, more than a few times. But I
All of us.
genuinely yes, and I want my significant other to know that hey, this is where I am, and I will say, well, I think it makes our situation worse at times because I haven't articulated how I'm feeling, and I expect it to already be known. So now a simple argument has turned into a bigger argument just because nobody can read my mind.
Right. And then of course when we're talking about long-term relationships, right, these things get compounded, right? So
Yes.
it's like you're already upset about something that happened 2 years ago and then it's still repeating thematically. And so what it comes down to understanding your own needs. So
Right.
when I work with couples, that's one of the first things that we do is we actually do an exercise around understanding your needs,
Okay.
right? How much autonomy do you actually need? How much alone time do you need so that you feel at your best? How much time do you think that, or how important is it for you to be surrounded by friends and family, or your hobbies, or your spirituality, or how important is growth to you?
Right,
How important is sex to you? All of these things, right? And then when you understand it yourself and you go, okay, if I were to prioritize like the top 5 things, and then you share this list, I've had so many couples that turn around and go, I've been married to you for 25 years and I had no idea spirituality was that important to you. And the man will go, "Yeah, well," and then the wife will say, "Well, you never go to church. You never Well, we have kids. When do I have time to take to go to church? They're always going to gymnastics, they're always going to the," and
right,
right? But he's actually never said, "I would really love if I can carve out Sunday mornings to go to church because spirituality is important to me."
right. And again, this is a breakdown in communication because 20 years and I didn't know that.
Right, and so we always talk about a breakdown in communication, but you can only communicate your needs once you actually understand your needs. I would say that for the most part, many of us as adults never took the time to understand our own personality needs. What do we need to feel whole and satiated and feel at our best self, right?
See,
Like, there's
and
needs
this
around safety and growth and security and, love and connection and social contribution. These are all those needs that even Tony Robbins talks about.
yeah,
We don't we don't often take the time to outline, "Okay, this is what's most important to me." And so if it's not clear in my own head, how can I possibly communicate that to a partner?
right. And see, and I think this is another step where, and again, I can't speak for women, but where men need to get in touch with themselves. And this is, for me, like I said, this has been a process. I've been to parenting classes, I've been to group therapy, and even from my time in the military, you know, I deployed with like 9 guy married guys. After our deployment, only 3 of those people those couples are still together.
Mhm.
Portion of that is, not having an outlet, us not being able to talk to our significant other, us dealing with issues and keeping it all in. And so being able to get in touch with what you have going on, what you've been through, what you and your needs requires you some reflection.
Yes.
You need to really sit down and reflect on what's happening to you. And if not for the things that I had been through, taking classes and all this other stuff, I would still I probably still I would be divorced. I would be in a, you know, situation where not ideal. So I say that to say that more men need this. We need to be able to talk and we need to, like I said, understand, do some self-reflection and understand what it is that we actually need.
I absolutely agree. And again, having needs doesn't make you needy, right? These are
Right.
very, very different things. My partner is very specific with me where physical fitness is really important to him. His work is really important to him. And he loves watching sports like football.
Yeah.
When it's Sunday afternoon, you know, that's what he's doing. He's already told me, like, that's what I want to be. That's me time, or I'm with the boys. I'm like, I understand that, right? You've already explained it to me. There's no need to, and there's no argument. There's no fight. I want him to be at his best.
Right. So that right there, see, us us talking to each other and explaining our needs, that right there is what we need more of. And not being offended. So if you tell me, "Hey Mike, listen, I need to spend some more time with, the girls just away from the house." I can't take that as a personal attack, or like you're mad at me. You just need some space. And that I think more of us need to hear what's being said to us. Like we're not being talked at or we're not being, belittled in any way just because our significant other or, hell, even, close friends and family just need some space. It, we can't be offended.
Yeah,
You know,
I
so
agree. Yeah.
like, man, listen, I
You
have
seem
so
like
when you
such a
told me that, my original list of questions would take 3 hours, and listen, we've only done a few here, and we've already done listen, Bev, we have got to do this again because I am
sure.
telling you, there are I have so many more questions, and then I get messages, after shows and everything, people email the show and ask me questions. "Hey, next time if you have this guest on, can you ask them this? Can you, inquire about that?" So we listen, I would love to have you on again. This has been so educational for me, and again, part of this is my own process, my own journey to be better, to emotionally, physically, spiritually. It's all my own journey that again, I have made my peace a priority, and I can tell you this has honestly only really, really happened in the last couple of weeks. The last few weeks, I've really
Enjoy
made
it.
my personal peace a priority.
The best
Anything that
decision you will
interferes with
ever
that,
make.
yeah, and, like, I feel great. I feel great over the last couple weeks that, like, this tremendous weight has been lifted off me because I'm not dealing with BS that
Yeah.
affects peace of mind.
So go ahead and feel free to use my little thing. I again, it's like a throwback from like 1980s when computers just came out, and you and I
Right.
again are the same age. But do you remember
Yeah.
you'd try to log in and it would go access denied, access
Yes.
denied.
Yeah.
That's what I someone comes at me with bullshit that I think is just going to, is not going to help me or serve me in any way. Access denied.
Yeah, and you know what? I can't feel bad about it. And that's something I used to always do. Like, when I would cut people off, I would feel so bad that I was doing this, you know, that I would let them back in, and a few months later, we'd be having the same conversation,
Right.
so
Yeah.
we need more of this. We need more of these conversations. Um, how do people get a hold of you?
So, my website is securelyloved.com. If people are
PureLove.com.
interested in finding out more about attachment style or their own attachment style, there's a little quiz right on the homepage at
Okay.
securelyloved.com. And you take the little quiz, and it'll tell you where you fall in one of those 4 boxes that we talked about. Um, I'm also on Instagram at securely_loved. And I'm trying to launch my YouTube page. So I'm
Okay.
I'm trying to get this information out. I'd love to build that up too. On YouTube, I'm at Securely Loved.
Okay. I will when I post this on like this whole thing on the Facebook page, I will include every link so people can get in contact with you because again, and my focus is guys, not that I have anything against the ladies, obviously, but I need more guys to do more, you know. And this is the only way we get to be better dads, better husbands,
Yeah,
better fathers, just
yeah.
better men in general. So,
But the men also need to know that they have the participation and the cooperation of the women, that as they are
yes,
trying, that the women will give them some grace to make mistakes, because we
right.
are going to make mistakes, and also to be authentic, right?
Yes.
So we can't be hard against our men when they're trying to do something different, when they're trying to make changes. So there's also, women have to get on board with this too.
Yes. Man, again, listen, right after we hang up, Imma start looking at my calendar because we've gotta do this again.
I've lost the
Yeah.
audio for some reason. Hold on a second.
Uh-oh.
I
Are
think
you
I've
still
lost
there?
the audio.
Okay, I'm gonna cut it right there. It's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Bev Mittelman, thank you for coming on the show. Have you back again soon.